Okay, so the next tip that we'd like to share with you is really one of my favorites, and it's curiosity.
Well,
Remain curious. What?
I relabeled it.
You did?
I relabeled it
What are you
because
calling it?
I'm saying it's create balance in the conversation.
Okay, well, we can go to that.
Okay.
Easy.
You can talk about curiosity first.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we're going to do both. Create balance in the relationship, but also curiosity. So curiosity is one side of that balance. And that has to do with understanding that no matter how well you think you know the person who's in front of you, they're a mystery. They're incredible. There's so little that we actually know about each other, and we're changing every single day. So the idea of curiosity has a lot to do with asking questions. That's my favorite thing to do. So
He's good at it too.
I find that we have a ritual of asking each other questions. We do it very often. And we'll say, what's one thing you want to know about me? And you'd be surprised after knowing each other for about 6 years now, there's still so much we don't know about each other. And again, what I'm feeling today may be different than what I felt yesterday. So we love questions. I love asking questions. And in friendships, I mean, it's just so profound to ask a simple question like, what's your biggest stressor right now in your life? What's your biggest joy right now in your life? My friends and I have a men's group. We get together regularly. We've been doing it for about 6 years. And we do something called Happy Crappy. And that means that, for men, this is sort of opening up and trying to be more open and vulnerable. So we each go around and we share one thing that we're really happy about in our lives right now, and one thing that's really crappy in our lives right now. And it's a great way to sort of let the conversation get to a deeper level. And so I encourage that with all people to continue to explore, ask questions, and want to know, be curious.
Yeah, Craig is really a master at asking questions and bringing questions into whatever group situations he's in. And when we first dated, I think on our first date, he came with like a list of questions. And I'm like, whoa, this is kind of strange. I don't know about this guy. But it worked because it created more intimacy in that one date than I've experienced in many, many dates with a man. And we were able to go deep, but not like ridiculously deep, but fun deep, really quick. And I've seen him, sometimes we'll go out with some friends and Greg will be like, what are we going to talk to him about? I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, I want to ask a few questions. And I always roll my eyes like, oh, come on, just let the conversation flow naturally. And he always gets his questions in. And I have to say that always it deepens the experience and people walk away, our friends walk away saying, that was a really cool evening.
It's about self-disclosure. It's about learning to be a little bit more open, taking a risk, asking a question that maybe pushes your boundaries a little bit, not too much, but just enough to kind of take the relationship a little bit deeper. And I think that's really important as you're cultivating a relationship. We want deepness. We want depth of connection.
Yeah. Okay. So going back to why I changed it. So, Craig likes to say, remain curious with your friends in your relationships and ask good questions and find out a lot about them. But sometimes it can go sideways on you. So if you're a really, really good question asker, then what happens is that the person becomes a pretty good responder. And we all, let's face it, we all like to talk about ourselves. So being with somebody like Craig, it's like kind of nice because I get to talk about myself a lot. But sometimes even with Craig, because he tends to lean heavy on the asking of questions, he'll come home and say, it was so-and-so, he didn't ask me one question. And I'm like, that's because you did all the questions. You didn't make space for him to ask questions, right? And also you develop a pattern of, I ask questions, you answer them. I ask questions, you answer them. And so you're creating the imbalance in the relationship. And so with this tip, I create balance in your conversations is just be aware And it may be that you have a tendency to be a question asker, a question answerer, or it may be with certain people you do it differently. I know in my own experience, I have relationships where they're asking me a lot of questions, and I love it. So I ask a lot, but if I start reflecting on the friendship, it's out of balance, and I need to be a little bit more curious about them. And then, on the other way, it works opposite with some friends. And so I always try and keep in mind, where is the balance? Because when it's out of balance, it doesn't feel good no matter what side you're on.
True.
And it's not as dynamic a relationship. But it's easy to get it back into balance. Once you're aware, that balance is more powerful.
And I think it's pretty easy to assess who you're with, whether you're somebody who asks or somebody who likes to talk a lot. There are people who are introverts and there are people who are extroverts. And if you're with an introvert, it's really great to help them open and connect. If you're with an extrovert, it's not as necessary. You might be able to talk about yourself a little bit more.
Right. Like for you, because you're so good at asking questions, sometimes it's harder for you to just share.
Yes, true.
So when he comes home and he's complaining, or it makes a comment, it's not like he's complaining, but he just makes a comment, then I always say, well, did you try just sharing things about yourself? Like just get in there and share information rather than be the information gatherer.
I'm not good at that. I love when somebody asks me a question. It's like such a breath of fresh air.
But sometimes they don't.
And oftentimes they don't.
So you just have to create the balance. You really need to just go in there and share the information.
Yeah, which I'm not good at.
You're not good at, but it is the solution.
It is. I have to push she pushes me harder to do that. And I get better at it over time. So,
Doesn't that go back to creating the space for them, whatever that looks like and what they need?
Yeah.
It does. It does and it doesn't. I'll tell you why. Because if I'm with somebody that is a question answerer, they're putting me in the position of asking a lot of questions, and they're really good at answering them. So I'm making space for them to do that, but it's not creating balance. See what I'm saying? So when I'm with somebody like that they're just not good at asking questions, they don't get that skill. And so I naturally want to fill the space with making space for them to answer them. So I'm asking them a lot of questions to get the conversation going. In this case, what you want to do is make space for the relationship. And the relationship's not showing up if it's just one person sharing. So the way I would make space for the relationship is I would start sharing myself. Rather than just asking questions for him to her to answer, I would offer more information.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Next.
Celebrate their wins.
Focusing on the positive. Yeah.
I reordered it.
That's okay. I like this one a lot. The part of this one she calls celebrating the wins. I call focusing on the positive. I love complimenting people. I love appreciating people. And I find that skill of telling somebody something that you appreciate about them is very, very powerful. I think it adds a quality to the connection, to the relationship that just raises the whole level up, the vibration of the relationship up. So you tell the person one thing I appreciate about you, and you share that with each other. We have a ritual. We call it the ritual of appreciation. We try to tell each other in a formal way one thing we appreciate about each other daily. And so I find that, that is also about celebrating wins, because I let Debbie know where I'm proud of her, what she's done that I feel so proud of, and I want to let her know and tell her and appreciate that. And she does the same for me. So celebrating her wins, complimenting her, giving her appreciations, admiring her just her beauty, her how wonderful you are, all the great things you're doing with your life, and letting you know.
But, getting back to women entrepreneurs, it's like sometimes what I find is that as wonderful and beautiful as those relationships are, sometimes they can get a little competitive. We're all out there trying to build our business, and we hear about what other people are doing. And sometimes it has a tendency to make us feel like, oh my God, I should be doing that. And sometimes other people's wins in their businesses make us feel insecure. And so when we say celebrate other people's wins, it's like really be happy for them. Really be happy when somebody has a great speaking series or whatever they're doing and they had great turnout and they're getting great results. It's like really be happy for your friends. Because energetically you're up leveling the relationship and it's all going to come back to you. But really don't be afraid to really celebrate that. And I've seen it with women entrepreneurs. I've witnessed it like viscerally. Somebody says, oh, this happened to me. And then I see them freeze. And they're just freezing out of their own insecurity, like I should be there. So let that go. Just be happy for your female entrepreneur friends, because it's going to be you sometime too. And it is.
Again, it goes back to that freeing, that if you free yourself from that negative and you rejoice in the positive, you all rise together and that energy just gets better.
Exactly.
So true.
Yeah. I you may know I ran the eWomen Network group in San Diego. And one of the things that I really liked about that group is the philosophy was lift as you climb and give first and share always. Those were the two things about that group.
I'm writing that down.
I know, it's pretty profound, right? And so the thing that made that group as successful as it was, and when I say successful, I mean energetically. We had a pretty strong group of loyal women who would come, and the energy in that room was so palpable because we really lived by give first, share always, and lift as you climb. And so people were always like, how can I help you? How can I help you? And so it was so nurturing. And I don't know if people's businesses really grew as a result, but I'll tell you, those relationships that they formed were 10 times more nurturing than in a different type of environment. Mm-hmm. And so we need that. We need that from each other, for sure. And it's powerful. So.
Great. Okay.
Is there more?
No, I think that's good. Beautiful. Beautifully said.
Okay, thank you, honey.
Yes. So the next one is repair and forgive. So how do we, I want to start this part talking a little bit about conflict. Conflict in relationships and friendships within your tribe, I find to be a little scary for people. They try to avoid conflict. There's a lot of conflict avoiders. And the problem with that is you don't allow the relationship to grow and deepen and become more intimate if you're avoiding conflict. Because as one of my teachers likes to say, conflict is growth waiting to happen. There's so much opportunity in conflict to deepen the relationship. So in order to allow for conflict, you also have to allow for repair, which means repair the conflict. So there's two sides to it. One is be open to conflict. And if you are in conflict with a friend, you need to be brave enough. And I think it does take some bravery to share it with that person and tell them, something happened and I need to talk with you about it. And we need to have a conversation. And I think at that point, if the person is open enough to listen, then you have a real friend, a real potential for a real friend. If you can get through that, now your relationship is solid. You can deal with conflict. So, and I've had friendships where I thought I had a deep friendship and it was tested by a major conflict and it didn't make it. And I'm sad to this day because of that. But it happens. But I'm glad it got tested. It had to be tested in that way. So let's assume that you do have a conflict and you're willing to work through it. The idea here is to repair it afterwards. So when we think of repair, we think often in terms of what to do with our car or our washing machine, as in it's broken and we need to repair it. That's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here is getting back on track in terms of preventing negativity from escalating in the relationship. We want to make sure that the relationship is back on track in terms of we're whole again. We're back, we're connecting. But in order to do that, sometimes certain things are necessary, such as, I'm sorry. It's a simple 2 words. You know how you like those words, Maureen? Is there more? Those are powerful words. I'm sorry is very powerful as well. We have to be able to sometimes say those things. We need to say things to our friend, to our colleague that is going to repair the relationship. I'm sorry, or I understand your point of view and you make sense. That's another way of validating. We're going to talk, Debbie's going to mention in a minute about the idea between right and wrong. And one of my teachers likes to say that in relation, you can be right or you can be in relationship. You can't have it both ways. Another way one of my teachers likes to say it is, there is no objective reality in relationship. There's my perspective and there's your perspective. And typically where a lot of the conflict comes in, and maybe you want to mention something about this, is I'm right, you're wrong.
Right. Well, it's the ego, so I think I mentioned that. The ego says, the ego wants us to be right and it wants us to look good. And so when we get into conflict, it naturally activates the ego. The ego is like, ooh, I need to help you. The ego always wants to be of service to you. And so somebody's coming at you with a complaint and the ego gets activated and we naturally kind of work toward proving our points and why we're right. And we lose the objectivity that Craig's referring to. And so knowing that anytime we're trying to prove our point and be right, the ego is activated, it's not going to go well in a relationship. The only thing that really goes well is to take responsibility for your part in the conflict. And even if the other person is 100% wrong in your mind, there's always something that you can take responsibility for.
And that's kind of circles back to the validation, which is understanding that in relationships, there's always going to be 2 perspectives. You have 2 human beings. They're never going to see the thing, whatever it is you're conflicted about, exactly the same way. And we need to be able to, as Debbie said earlier, hold the space for 2 different perspectives to be able to be there simultaneously without one being right and one being wrong.
I think part of the problem here is that we're not really raised with the skill set to deal with conflict. In fact, I think sometimes just the opposite. I remember when my daughter was like 3 years old, she came home and she said, Mommy, what does tilly-tally mean? And I said, tilly-tally. I said, where did you hear it? She says, Emma said she was going to tilly-tally on me. I said, Emma said she was going to tilly-tally. I think it's tattletale. I said, what happened? And she says, and then she just told me this whole thing. She says, and after she told me, she says, I'm just not going to be friends with Emma anymore. And I said, whoa, wait a second, Shana. I said, if every time you get into a disagreement or a conflict with a friend and you walk away from that friendship, you're going to end up with no friends. Because friends will bring conflict and friends will bring disagreement. And you got to learn how to work it out. And you will, and you can. We talked about how you do that. And I think a lot of times, like, parents do their kids a disservice in saying, yeah, you shouldn't be friends with her. What a crappy friend. And so, they take our side and they don't teach us the skills that we need at a young age. And I saw this in organizations like all over the place. And you compound that with our natural inclination to be right because our ego gets activated, and you got a little bit of a situation going on. And many of the skills that we're talking about today are really helpful in resolving the conflict. We have when we get into a conflict, a lot of times the phrase that we'll use is, you're right, I'm wrong, I'm sorry. And it kind of diffuses it. It's magic. We say it's a magic phrase because it's like, even if they're totally not responsible, like it was really on me or on him, the person says it, it's like, okay, I'm good now. So sometimes you just have to pull out a magic phrase and get over it. Other times it requires a conversation. And we talked about earlier, the deep listening, those are the skills you want to use. So conflict's going to happen. You have to learn how to repair. You have to have the ability to be vulnerable and to be self-disclosing and to listen and to validate and to empathize. And you use all those, and you're going to have a really nice repair. And as Craig said, it's going to elevate the friendship to a higher level because we got through that. We can do this.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Right. So it's really powerful.
Good. Beautiful. Can I read the poem?
Wait a second. I'm just
more?
looking.
Is there more?
Is there more? Yeah, I think there is one more thing that we're missing. Maybe not. Maybe we got it all. I think we got it all.
So, yeah.
So, do you have any questions for us? Or we've been rambling on?
Well, no. I'd like to be able to have this as a downloadable.
Okay.
And
Sure.
offering that to the audience.
Okay.
And the word, when you say tilly tally, does that still come back with your daughter?
She's got a million of them.
Got a million of them, yeah.
I do want to end by reading this poem, Maureen, and if it's okay, I don't know. David Whyte is a Irish modern-day poet, and he wrote on friendship. And I know that a lot of what we've been discussing is about friendship and how to solidify those. So Debbie and I will read one of my favorite essays by David Whyte. Friendship is a mirror to presence and a testament to forgiveness. Friendship not only helps us see ourselves through another's eyes, but can be sustained over the years only with someone who has repeatedly forgiven us for our trespasses, as we must find it in ourselves to forgive them in turn. A friend knows our difficulties and shadows and remains in sight, a companion to our vulnerabilities more than our triumphs. When we are under the strange illusion that we don't need them. An undercurrent of real friendship is a blessing, exactly because its elemental form is rediscovered again and again through understanding and mercy. All friendships of any length are based on a continued mutual forgiveness. Without tolerance and mercy, all friendships dies.
And it goes on, in the course of the years, a close friendship will always reveal the shadow in the other as much as ourselves. To remain friends, we must know the other and their difficulties, and even their sins, and encourage the best in them, not through critique, but through addressing the better part of them, the leading creative edge of their incarnation, thus subtly discouraging what makes them smaller, less generous, less of themselves. And yet friendship is a merited grace, one that requires of us the unrelenting commitment of showing up for and bearing witness to one another over and over. The dynamic of friendship is always, almost always, underestimated as a constant force in human life. A diminishing circle of friends is the first terrible diagnostic of a life in deep trouble, of overwork, of too much emphasis on a professional identity, of forgetting who will be there when our armored personalities run into the inevitable natural disasters and vulnerabilities found in even the most average existence. But no matter the medicinal virtues of being a true friend or sustaining a long, close relationship with another, the ultimate touchstone of friendship is not improvement, neither of the other or of ourselves. The ultimate touchstone is witness, the privilege to have being seen by someone, and the equal privilege of being granted the sight of the essence of another, to have walked with them, to have believed in them, and sometimes just to have accompanied them for however brief a span on a journey impossible to accomplish alone. David Whyte is amazing.
I liked that a lot.
Yeah.
I'm going to text a buddy of mine as soon as I get off.
Right? So, Maureen, thank you so much for having us. This has been a real pleasure and honor to be here.
Thank you guys. I'm so excited. I can't wait for the book. Just this even a piece of the book. It just shows how great it's going to be and how valuable.
Thank you. Thanks, Maureen. I look forward to meeting you in person.
Yes.
Okay, absolutely. Come back home to San Diego. I'll create some space for both of you.
Thank you. We look forward to it.
Same here.
Safe travels, and see you guys soon. Thank you both. And okay, when the book comes out, you guys come back.
We will.
We will. We would love to.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye. Good night, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night.